Welcome back. In our last two videos, we looked at the plant-wide allocation rate for factory overhead, and then we looked at the departmental allocation rate. Now we're going to do a fairly simple example of activity-based costing, and then in the next video, we'll go into something that's a little more complex. In activity-based costing, we're basically allocating factory overhead based on the activities that drive those overhead costs or cause those overhead costs. Okay, so we're actually tying the driver of the costs to the allocation, which is going to get us something that is hopefully a bit more accurate, which will help us to identify our product costs better and help us figure out the best way to price our products. All right, so in this worksheet, we have three activities. We don't know what they are. It doesn't matter for this. And we have costs that we associate with each of those activities. And then we have the budgeted activity of the cost drivers, okay? So the first thing we want to do is say, how much total activity do we have? This is our denominator. Our numerator is going to be the cost. Our denominator is the activity. So to do this, we just add up the amount of activity that each product has. Okay, so product A used 35,000 units of that activity, whatever it is. If it's machine hours, they use 35,000 machine hours. Not product A, all the products together. So in total, we expect to have 35,000 of activity A. And then we'll just copy this down. So we expect to use 30,000 of activity 2 and 5,125 units of activity 3, whatever activity 3 is. Okay, so now we have our numerator, which is our costs, and we have our denominator, the total amount of activity that we're going to use, right? Maybe it's direct labor hours, machine hours, and space, square feet. So now what we do to figure out our total factory overhead per unit of activity is we take our total costs and we divide it by the amount of activity we expect to have. So for activity 1, a product that uses 1 unit of activity 1 would be allocated $4 of factory overhead. We'll do the same thing for activity 2. We take the total cost, divide it by the expected level of activity. And for product 3, we'll do the same thing, total cost divided by expected level of activity. So for activity 2, we would allocate $3 of factory overhead for every 1 unit of that activity. And for activity 3, we would allocate $16 of factory overhead for every unit of that activity. Okay, so then the final step is we're going to allocate out our factory overhead costs, okay? So product A uses 20,000 units of activity 1 times our factory overhead per activity of 4. So product A is going to get $80,000 of factory overhead costs related to its use of activity 1. For activity 2, product A uses 8,000 units of that activity times an allocation rate of $3 per unit. So product A is going to get a total of $24,000 of overhead allocated to it based on its use of 8,000 of activity 2. For activity 3, product A uses 1,625 times a rate of $16 per use of that activity. So they're going to get allocated a total of $26,000 of factory overhead for related to activity 3. So if we add all of those costs up, then we know that our production of product A for this period will be allocated a total of $130,000 of factory overhead. Okay. So now I'm going to do the same things for B and C. If you feel like you've got it, go ahead and pause the video, do it on your own, and then come back. If you want to see some more examples, then just keep the video running and we'll do it together. So product B uses 9,000 of activity 1 times our factory overhead allocation per activity of $4. So related to activity 1, product B will get $36,000 of factory overhead. For activity 2, product B uses 15,000 times a rate of $3. So they get allocated a total of $45,000 of factory overhead related to activity 2. For activity 3, they use 1,000 times the rate of 16. The product B gets allocated $16,000 of factory overhead related to activity 3. We're going to add all of those up. And we know that in this period, we are going to allocate a total of $97,000 of factory overhead to product B. For product C related to activity 1 uses 6,000 times the rate of 4. So they're going to get $24,000 of factory overhead related to activity 1. For activity 2, they use 7,000 divided by, or times 3, a rate of $3, for a total of $21,000 of factory overhead. And then product C uses 2,500 related to activity 3 times $16, the rate. And we add that up. And product C is going to get allocated a total of $85,000 of factory overhead in the current period. All right, so now let's check our answers. So our total factory overhead allocated related to activity 1 is $140,000. And that's exactly the amount of factory overhead that we thought was related to activity 1. If I copy this, we have allocated a total of $90,000 of factory overhead related to activity 2, and that's exactly what we wanted to allocate. We've allocated a total of $82,000 of factory overhead related to activity 3, which is exactly what we wanted to allocate. Finally, I'm going to add all of these up. The total amount of factory overhead that I've allocated is $312,000, which was the sum of all of our factory overhead here. Okay, so we have successfully allocated all of our factory overhead using activity-based costing. All right, that's our simple example. Our next example will be a little more complex. And so keep going and you'll get to the next video. See you then.